Good evening. I would like to call this council meeting of the town of Lincoln to order July 17th, 2023. And I would ask that everyone please stand for the national anthem.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command.
Car ton bras s'est porté l'épée, il s'est porté la croix. Ton histoire est une épopée des plus brillants exploits.
God keep our land glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Thank you. Please be seated. I'll begin this evening with a safety notice. In the event of an emergency, please evacuate council chambers to the nearest exit through the council doors and obey all instructions given if assistance is required. And the clerk, Madam Clerk, Julie Kirklos will be in charge once we've left the council chambers. Please ensure that you place your cell phones on silent or turn them off. And lastly, the Town of Lincoln Council meetings are posted on our YouTube channel. Closed captioning is available on all our videos by selecting the closed captioning button on the bottom right of the video. The town of Lincoln is being part of the Niagara region, is situated on treaty land. This land is steeped in the rich history of the First Nations, such as the Attawandaronk, the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. There are many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The regional municipality of Niagara and the town of Lincoln stands with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands on which we live. Members of council are all in attendance this evening, either in the chambers or on video, with the exception of Councillor Mike Mikulik. We also have staff attending both in person and remotely. And also in attendance this evening, we have Regional Councillor Rob Foster. Item number 5 is confirmation of agenda. Do members have any additions or amendments to the order of the agenda? There being none, are there any declarations of interest? There being none, I'll move on to number 7, item number 7, which is announcements by members. Do members have any announcements? And please remember you have a limit of 3 items. Sounds like it's been a slow news week. All right, we'll move on to proclamations. We have no proclamations this evening. We have no recognition and achievements this evening. We have one delegation this evening, being Regional Councillor Foster with an update report. Councillor Foster, would you please come forward?
There we go. Good evening, Council, and thank you for having me here this evening. I provided a report to you, earlier today. It's usually the time that I try and get it to you first thing in the morning ahead of your meetings. I'd like to get it to you sooner, but it's funny, I just seem to be doing things and well, sorry about that. Just a quick update to what's going on. Mayor Easton and I were both at an event today down at Charles Daly Park. We had our photo taken with our MPP, Mr. Oosterhoff. And this was a discussion in and around funding that's out and available. And in fact, the NPCA received a good amount of funding to help with some of the work in and around erosion and these types of things, particularly in and around the Niagara River. So, a good news story again. And I'm sure Mayor Easton will talk about it a little bit further in her discussion later tonight. I also was at the procedural committee at Niagara Region this morning. If you remember back last term, our procedural committee came through with a number of changes, and it was going to streamline the way that the region was going to work. And some of the changes are very similar to what you have here at the town of Lincoln, in and around delegation times, et cetera, within it. And that failed miserably for a variety of political reasons at the tail end of our last council. But we're doing a slow and steady incremental approach to procedural bylaw this term. And we're going to be making the changes that are needed and required within the procedural bylaw at Niagara Region. This Thursday night, we have our regional council meeting. What's come out of our committees and I suspect is going to be relatively well discussed Thursday night again. Changes to the Blue Box program are going on. For those of you that aren't aware, the Blue Box program is being transitioned from the responsibility of regional government to a producer pay type of a scenario with Blue Box programs. The region was asked to make a decision as to when we wanted to actually start doing the official transition. Coming out of committee, we essentially said we're opting in as of January the 1st of next year. This is a good news, bad news situation for everyone. The good news is that we're going to see a little bit of relief when it comes to taxation in and around waste management. Bad news is that some of the recycling programs are going to be changing quite differently. Some of the things that we have really worked hard to get us to a full recycling, I guess, if you want to put it that way. Some of those things are not going to necessarily be available for recycling anymore. So we're going to have a good discussion at Niagara Region over the course of the next number of months, particularly as we go up to budget to make decisions as to what those extraneous items, what we're going to do, what the expectation of it is. I sit on the Waste Management Steering Committee as well. And we did have a discussion in and around landfill in and across Niagara. And the good news on that one is from a landfill point of view, we're actually in very good shape. Niagara Road 12 has an amazing capacity for a long period of time, thanks to the recycling efforts, as do our other landfill sites in and across Niagara. But we're going to make sure that we know and understand the true impact with any of these changes that are going on and looking again down in the future with this. We're also going to have a discussion coming out of our Public Health Committee. We want to remove, or at least the committee suggested we remove, the emergency declaration in and around homelessness, mental health, and opioid addictions. The change that is being recommended is not to understate what it is that's going on in these areas. In fact, we want to reiterate that all three of these areas are of significant concern within Niagara. But the problem is that the way that we have done this with the emergency declarations is there is a whole series and sequence of things that come into play with this, including regular emergency meetings that have to go on with senior staff down at the region, and resources are being put towards that. And from our point of view as the regional council, or at least many of us, this is a waste of resources. We should really be focusing on the problems themselves and putting our time and effort into those. So we shall see what comes out Thursday night. My expectation is that we are simply going to be relabeling, but still making the big confirmation that these are significant issues that we must be dealing with here in Niagara. And finally, for Thursday night as well, I've been working with Councillor Kaiser down in from Niagara on the Lake. Councillor Kaiser is quite involved with the wine industry down there. There's a motion coming forward, actually very similar to what we had last term. I know Councillor Easton and Councillor DeSero ended up moving motions last term to essentially say that there's unfairness going on within the sale of wine within our farms here within Niagara. We want to reiterate that Niagara Region is a major supporter of the winery industry, but the provincial government does need, provincial and federal governments have to take a look at this excise tax that's coming into play, particularly on farm-based sale of wine. So it's a reiteration of that as we're moving along. The other thing that I didn't put on my list for you, and this came up from discussions later on last week. The town of Lincoln has a 10-year capital plan that it looks at, so that you can make good decisions on what roads, what infrastructure, all these types of things has to be done when. Niagara Region has what we will refer to as a road condition analysis that's come into play. So they actually have very detailed information on roads in and across Niagara and other pieces of infrastructure to make sure that we know and understand what needs to have work done, or what condition are those things really at. But the problem is we really don't have a 10-year capital plan at Niagara Region. So from discussions that I've had with the new commissioner, the acting commissioner, as well as our Director of Transportation, I'm going to be pushing that we move down the road, and hopefully we will consider doing that as part of our budget process this year. So I don't know about the rest of you, but when I come out on to come over here to Town Hall on the South Service Road, and I'm getting banged around on the road with the condition of that as it's coming around. I really want to know and understand when we're going to be looking at the redoing of these things. And I think we need to be making it much better so that Councillor Easton and I both can come to you and say, this is when this road is going to be done when. And so, hopefully improve that entire process. So we shall see where that goes. The last thing, speaking of roads, I just want to thank Mayor Easton and Councillors Patrieva and Bernay, as well as CA Okarkopoulos and Mr. Graham as well, for the meeting last week with a bunch of concerned citizens in and around the Region's EA that's going on for Bartlett and Park Road. So I thought it was a good and frank open discussion, and we shall see where it's going. As both Mayor Easton and I have reconfirmed, our ears are to the ground on where this entire process is going to, and we'll be able to report as things happen. So that's my report for this evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Are there any questions from any councillors? I see Councillor Timmers.
Thank you very much, Mayor Easton, through you to Regional Councillor Rob Foster. Thanks for being here tonight. So around the blue box, I know there's already a lot of conversation going on, and I don't have a lot of information yet. So can you just explain it to me a little better? So you're saying it's moving to the producers. Does this mean like a subcontract, like they would be taking it over instead of the region? Is that what that means?
In a manner of speaking, yes, they're going to be responsible for paying for the Blue Box program. So that's going to be their responsibility when it's all said and done, producers themselves. There are two organizations here in the province that it appears are the ones that are the funding organizations that are being used to go and actually pay for this. In the case of Niagara Region, I don't think this is going to look terribly different January 1st next year for a person who has their recycling out in front of their house. However, there are some particular plastics that that Niagara Region currently recycles that the new producers do not have responsibility for. So it's the question is, are we going to continue recycling that and dealing with it accordingly, or is this going to be something that is going to have to become part of the garbage that's going out through the bag? So we'll find out as we go further with this. We've requested more information, and we have a very good director, Catherine Habermill, that's dealing with this. And so we have other reports that are going to be coming back to us as we're moving along.
Okay, thank you, Counselor. That's helpful. I think it's comes down to what the residents, what does it mean to them? Because I think they're hearing no blue box program anymore. What are we gonna do? That's kind of what the
No.
talk is right now. So
Yeah, no, that's
Yeah.
actually totally and completely
Yeah,
the opposite. It's just who's going to be paying for
Got
it
it.
really is when it's all said and done.
no,
So
that's great. That's very
Yeah.
helpful. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mary Easton.
Thank you very much. I see no other question. You're getting off easy tonight. Counselor,
I'm going to be home before 9 o'clock tonight. Perfect.
you might, we won't get into it tonight, but the town of Lincoln is also engaged in a road condition process for establishing where our roads stand. So you might want to have a discussion with Director Graham about that, and how that's working, because as you know, the 10-year capital plan is still only a guideline.
Yeah.
But I think we know it all well enough that we know what you're talking about.
Well,
So,
I can say with that, Mr. Pachariuva over here and I have spent many an AMO conference looking at the technologies that are available so that we can really truly see and understand what's going on. And I know you guys here at the town, I give full credit, have gone down the road with some of these things to make sure that you know and understand. And I think the region is at a state where I think they have a good understanding of what the road conditions really are. But again, there's no priority on on how things are going to be done. It seems, to be perfectly honest, I find it seems a little random. So so that's yours and my job, Counselor / Mary Easton, as we deal with the rest of our friends to make sure that we keep reiterating, our roads need to be done too. So.
yeah, that's exactly right. Okay, thank you very much, Counselor. We'll move on now, Counselors, and I have a motion moved by Counselor Murray and seconded by Counselor Russell that Council receive and file for information the following delegations. Regional Counselor Foster. Madam Clerk, would you please open the vote?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and the vote is now open. Councillor Regima,
In favor.
and I will close that vote. And that carries. Thank you.
Thank you. The motion is carried, and we move on now to item number 11. We have one item brought forward for consideration this evening from the council information package. And this comes from the week ending July 7th. We were just a bit out there. It was really good to read it. And I'm going to ask Councillor Timmers to speak to the item. It's included in the package, and it's the Age-Friendly Resources Guide. Go ahead, Councillor Timmers.
Thank you very much, Mary Easton. The Age-Friendly and Active Community Advisory Committee, as it is now known as, merged. In the last term of council, we had an age-friendly advisory committee, and we accomplished a fair bit in our term. And even though we had a couple of years of COVID, we had 2 guides that we developed. And with timing, the term came to an end, and then the election, and we just didn't get them across the finish line. So on July 5th, we held a special meeting with our new committee to finally pass these, and which we did unanimously. And I want to thank Shannon McKay and Sarah Ain and especially Lori Laird and our past chair, Charlotte Sheridan, because they were really the drivers behind these two guides. And so we have an age-friendly business guide, which is just what it is. It's just a guide for businesses. It's a checklist. I'm sure you've looked through the documents, just to look at their business and are they age-friendly? Are they all inclusive? A lot of other municipalities have these, so we thought it would be very useful to the business community. And then the other guide that we developed was the age-friendly and accessible meetings and event guide. And we discovered also that Town of Lincoln didn't have one. So we thought it was a really great initiative to undertake it. So this would be simply for anyone who's applying to do a special event or hold a meeting. And you're looking at not only age-friendly, is it age-friendly, but also is it accessible? And this second guide we developed with help from the Joint Accessibility Advisory Committee as well. So just really proud that these are done. They're going to be available in hard copy as well as digital. And I just wanted to put it out there so council are aware what they are and why we did them. So thank you very much, Mary Easton, for letting me speak about them.
Right, well, I think we should be very proud. We should all be very proud of these documents because although they are not considered to be a rule, they certainly provide a great deal of context in terms of background material when you're planning an event. And so where things can be done readily, this is a good reminder, and where they can't, it provides a guide for the future if that's where organizations feel that they want to go. Certainly, it might be important if you wanted to increase your attendance to make sure that your events were met some of these guidelines. So that's great. I don't see any questions coming from councillors. And so I wanted to thank you very much, Lynn, and if you would please pass it on at the next meeting, our thanks for producing this really useful document. It's very important to have the perspective that is included here. All right. Let me see where we're at. I have a motion moved by Councillor Timmers and seconded by Councillor Pachariva that council receive and file for information the following items of correspondence. Town of Lincoln dated July 7th, 2023 regarding age-friendly resource guides. Madam Clerk, would you please open the vote?
And the vote is now open, Madam Mayor. Councillor Regina, I'll need your vote, please.
In favor. Thank you.
And I'll close that vote. And that carries.
Thank you very much. That motion carried. And we move on now to item 12, which is a motion to approve previous council minutes. And we're now considering item 12.1, the council minutes of June 26th, 2023. Do members of council have any questions? There being none, I have a motion moved by Councillor Regina and seconded by Councillor Reimer. The council approved the minutes of the following meetings of council minutes of June 26, 2023. Madam Clerk, would you please open the vote?
And the vote is now open. Councillor Regina,
In favor. Thank you.
thank you. And that carries unanimously, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. The motion is carried. We move on now to item 13, recommendations from standing committees. And we're considering the following. The Committee of the Whole minutes of July 10th, 2023. Do members of council have any questions? There being none, I have a motion moved by Councillor Brunet and seconded by Councillor Murray that council approve the following recommendations from Standing Committee. Committee of the Whole minutes of July 10th, 2023. Madam Clerk, would you please open the vote?
And the vote is now open. Counselor Rajima,
In favor, thank you.
and I'll close that vote. And that carries.
Thank you very much. There is no notice of motion this evening, and there is no mayor's report this evening. We'll move on now to item number 16, which is a motion to consider confidential matters. We have no confidential matters this evening. Item 17 is a motion to approve bylaws. We have 4 bylaws for consideration today. And I'll ask first if, well, let me, I'll go to the staff comment first in case you want to ask any questions about that. So let's go to bylaw 2023-47. 2023-47 is a bylaw to authorize the execution of a site plan agreement between the Corporation of the Town of Lincoln and 1878168 Ontario Inc. And Mr. Director Paul Deanne wishes to speak to this motion. Mr. Deanne, are you available?
I am, Madam Mayor. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Go ahead, please.
Perfect. Thank you. And good evening, members of council. So I know Miss She is here this evening to speak to the particulars of the site plan agreement with the proponent. However, I wanted to take this opportunity to say a few words on what this investment means for the town of Lincoln and of course our tourism sector. So this new hotel for the community represents a great investment attraction initiative that began by economic development and tourism staff, but obviously working closely with our partners in planning. Staff first began outreach to the property owner approximately 2 years ago to bring this hotel to the community. And of course, after countless meetings with staff from both departments, tonight's bylaw represents a successful investment attraction strategy, culminating in our first large-scale hotel investment in the community in approximately 20 years. Of course, by having more accommodations in Lincoln, our tourism sector will continue to grow and showcases the strength of the Niagara Benchlands as a must-visit destination, helping to, of course, bring more jobs and tourism spending in the community. So, Madam Mayor, thank you for the opportunity for speaking. I obviously just wanted to highlight the importance of this investment into our community. I obviously look forward to any questions council may have, but as I mentioned, Ms. She is here from planning to speak to the particulars. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So since this is a planning matter, first I'll ask councillors if you have any questions regarding the planning element of this bylaw, and we'll have Ms. She respond accordingly. All right, we'll move on then. Do any members of the council have any additional questions that you'd like to ask Mr. Deanne?
Counselor Rajima.
Oh, okay. Councillor Rajima, is your question for Ms. She or Director Deanne?
Miss She, please. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms. She, would you please just be on the alert, and we'll ask Councillor Rajima to ask her question. Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you. So my question is about the location of the hotel. I know that there's some industrial uses behind. So is there any work that had to be done in terms of measuring impact or back and forth between a hotel use and an industrial use behind it?
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor. Go ahead, Ms. She.
Through you, Madam Mayor, yes, the applicant had to look at land use compatibility, and most of that related to noise and potential noise impacts. So as a result of the studies that were completed, there is a recommendation to include air conditioning, increased masonry requirements for the wall, and increased glazing requirements for the windows.
Okay.
Councillor Rajima, that's what you had in mind?
That is what I was asking. Yeah, I know that when there's a use abutting a residential use, sometimes there's, when there's an industrial use abutting a residential use, sometimes there's studies that have to be met and requirements that have to be met. So I was curious about that. Appreciate that, Madam Mayor, and appreciate that, Ms. She.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Melissa. I see no other questions. I have a motion moved by Counselor Timmers and seconded by Counselor Benjima. Right. That's what we're doing now. We're going to go through all of them. There's no more questions on this one. I'll just check again. Other questions to any of the other bylaws? All right, then I have a motion moved by Counselor Timmers and seconded by Counselor Benjima that leave be given to approve the following bylaws. 2023-47. A bylaw to authorize the execution of a site plan agreement between the Corporation of the Town of Lincoln, 1878168 Ontario, Inc., together with any and all mortgagees that may be on title at the point of registration of the agreement. 2023-48. Bylaw to authorize the execution of a heritage grant agreement between the Corporation of the Town of Lincoln and James and Mary Jane Davison. 2023-49. Bylaw to amend bylaw 2017-24 as amended, being a bylaw to establish an administrative monetary penalty system in respect to the stopping, standing, or parking of motor vehicles in the Town of Lincoln. 2023-50. Bylaw to amend bylaw 2022-11 as amended, being a bylaw for the appointment of screening officers to adjudicate reviews and appeals of administrative monetary penalties in the Town of Lincoln. Madam Clerk, would you please open the vote?
And the vote is now open, Madam Mayor. Counselor Regima, can I get your vote, please?
In favor, thank you, Julie.
Thank you. And that carries, Madam Mayor. Thanks.
Thank you very much. The motion is carried. Item number 18 is a motion to confirm the proceedings of the council meeting, and we will now confirm the proceedings of the council meeting. I have a motion moved by Councillor Breimer and seconded by Councillor Pachariva that leave be given to introduce bylaw number 2023-51, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council at its meeting held Monday, July 17th, 2023, being read a first, second, and third time. That bylaw number 2023-51 be enacted and passed, and that the mayor and clerk sign and seal the said bylaw. Madam Clerk, would you please open the vote?
And the vote is now open. Counselor Regima,
In favor, thank you.
I will close that vote. And that carries, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. The motion is carried. We move on to the motion to adjourn. I have a motion moved, no, we're not quite there yet. Before we motion to adjourn the meeting, do members have any comments? There being none, I have a motion moved by Councillor Murray and seconded by Councillor Russell. Oh, Councillor Pachariva. Councillor.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. I wanted to remind everyone that on Saturday, the Step Up for Ukraine bike ride is taking place again. Going to be beginning in Niagara Falls, and they're coming out to Rosewood Winery. And I know, Your Worship, you were there last year greeting the riders and bringing greetings from them, or from the town to them. We've got a little swag for some of the riders that are coming. There's a smaller ride, a 30K ride, and I think a 60K and 120K, and then a 20K ride. Just going around to some wineries that. So even though, politically it seems that things have faded, the conflict is still taking place, and they still need to raise money for the people in Ukraine. So I would encourage you to come out. Donate to the ride, head down to the Ukrainian church in Niagara Falls, because they're also going to be selling food. And I must say, last year, it was Yumski Bob.
Well done. All right, thank you very much for that. Yes, that was quite a grueling ride. It was a pretty hot day as well, so. Okay, Now, I do have a motion moved by Counselor Murray, seconded by Counselor Russell, that the council meeting on July 17th, 2023 be adjourned at 18:40 hours. How's that, Counselor Russell?
Thanks, Madam Mayor, and the vote is now open. Counselor Regima in the affirmative.
In favor, thank you.
Thank you. And I close that vote and that carries, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The motion is carried. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. And this concludes our council meeting for this evening. And thank you very much, staff, for your support. And thanks very much, councilors.
Good night, everybody.